So we are all ears. What's in the legislation?
Oh, well, you know, this is about the Whitehall Star, this is about the Westport News, this is about justice and equity for news producers who haven't had anything, basically, over the last few years. And you know, being a journalist, how probably many of your friends have suffered because of, you know, the big companies just taking news and not getting any, the little player not getting any compensation for it. So this is just about levelling the bargaining field, giving them an opportunity. So we'll bring in a process if they can't reach a deal. And, you know, I've been challenged by the industry from the end of last year. They said we need a chance, we need an opportunity. So really pleased with the support for this.
Yeah, well, so just for our audience who may not sort of understand all the ins and outs of it, this is basically legislation that sits in the background, so that if media organisations and big online platforms like Google and Facebook, for example, can't successfully negotiate, the government says we'll step in and do it for you.
Well, here's the reality. They just wouldn't negotiate. They just wouldn't. You know, we had the NPA, the News Publishers Association, wanting to, you know, to negotiate. They just wouldn't do it. So Commerce Commission said, hey, NPA can actually negotiate. They still held back. Well, it wasn't really until I started talking about it at the end of last year that deals started to happen. And deals have been happening, and I'm pleased to see that in terms of, you know, places like the Spin-Off, Herald, TVNZ. This place doesn't have a deal yet. Number of Māori media outlets don't. But at least things have been happening because, and I'll give Google some credit. They've been doing deals. I met with them last week. They don't want the legislation, but the legislation is important because it provides a backstop and support. And everyone I know in the industry wants it, apart from someone like Melissa Lee, who's sadly a bit confused about the whole thing.
We'll get to her in a moment. But what exactly are you going to do? You know, what are the mechanisms? Because other countries have been pretty tough on this. How tough are you going to be?
Well, Australia's been very good, actually. In fact, they're not even using the court process or the tribunal process because people have been reasonable. And what we're saying is just sit down and do a deal.
And what will you do if they don't?
Well, they'll be... I mean, look, we don't want to go down that track, but we haven't worked out what the fines will be. But if they don't get around and sit down and talk through this, you know, productively and talk about, you know, the contribution that maybe the Greymouth Star is making or the Whitehall Star is making, you know, we should be able to talk about that as mature people and as mature groups. And, you know, I think that this is the process that, you know, going forward that will be supported. The industry is almost unanimous with this. I noticed yesterday NZME CEO came out and criticised National because, well, not so much the leader, but Michelle Lee. They were shocked that she would not support this. This is about, you know, looking after the little person.
And I want to know how you're going to do that. I want to know, so there will be penalties?
No, well, you know, here's the thing. The tribunal sits there in the background. There is an obligation on the two parties to get together. If the big tech company does not come together, then, well, they'll be forced to come together.
How will they be forced? So be designated in Australia and put into arbitration?
Yeah, that's exactly how it'll go. But in Australia, they haven't even had to do that. Because who wants to go to arbitration and get a $50,000 fine or whatever? You know, I'm not saying that's going to be the fine, but inevitably you'd go down that track if there's a total refusal from the big tech company to meet with the media organisation. I think that you know, we're seeing it now. We've got 40 deals happening. We've had 40 deals, but those people who've done deals have all been in touch with me and said we still want the legislation, because if there's no legislation, then there's probably no obligation to do deals.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about penalties, but you know, if they can't get a deal done, or if they won't come to the table. And we're also talking about arbitration.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that would be the normal process, and I don't know what the fines will be. I don't want to go down that track. But
a bit more than 50 grand, though, Willie? Because that's not going to. You're not going to skip a beat.
I think common sense takes over. Do a deal. You know, New Zealand, we've lost 50% of our journalists in the last 5 years. It's terrible. And now this is an opportunity for Kiwi journalists all around the country, for news publishers, and I'm really buoyed by the support.
What does Google say about it? Because you said you met with him last week. They don't want the ledge?
They don't want it. They don't want it. But I'll say to them, well done. They've done some good deals. They haven't. There's no threats about them pulling out.
I was going to say they're going to pull their content because that's what's happened in Canada just this week. Canadians right now are not getting any news because of as you know, sort of a counterpoint to the legislation that they've introduced. That could happen here.
Do you reckon? How much money do you reckon Google made last year?
I have no idea.
850 million.
Yeah, but they've pulled their content. They've pulled their content in Canada.
Yeah, hang on.
So you can't deny that can't happen here.
You're the CEO of Google, right?
I'm not the CEO of Google.
You've made $850 million, right? This deal, looking after the industry, might cost you 40 or 50 million. You still walk out with 800.
Yeah.
Are you going to walk away from New Zealand?
But you're talking to Google right now. You're not talking to me, and I'm asking you what happens if they pull their news content.
Well, the reality is that we have to continue this. You know, we can't be. Look, this is part of the process. People get threatened, governments get threatened, news organisations get threatened, but they made 800. That's all I say. They made 850 million last year. Meta made 150 million. So.
Final question on this: there will be plenty in our industry who say this has taken too long, Willie.
Yeah.
You've been running in the wrong direction, chasing a public broadcasting merger. This is actually where the real work could be done.
Well, yeah, OK, we didn't get the merger up, but we've got a lot of other things up. We've got this in place.
It's taken too long, though, hasn't it?
It has taken too long, but the main point is it's in now. And look, any right-thinking person or right-thinking party would support this because you don't want to get offside with the media, do you, Rebecca?
No, I don't think you do. I don't think you're not in an election campaign period anyway. I want to switch focus now to RNZ because we had that report back this week. I mean, it cost $230,000, Willie. It's expensive. Do we get bang for buck?
You got some top-line people there, you know, Linda Clark and them, you know, with respect, I shouldn't say that, but, you know, these people don't go. She's fantastic, and we've got Willie Akel and our guy from...
They're expensive. Did we get bang for buck?
I mean, it was 70,000 each. I mean, we had no choice.
230 grand.
Yeah, but you had three of the top people in the business. When you have national... I mean, you're almost talking about national security here. You've got the national broadcaster. You have to actually pull every... You can't skimp on it and get Lincoln Rebecca and Jack Tame to sort of investigate.
I tell you what, we could have done exactly what they did in that report for far less than $10,000 per recommendation.
With respect, you don't have the you don't have the background and experience that these people have.
But it was pretty basic stuff, Willie, that I read.
In terms of the report that came back.
Yeah, and the recommendations.
Well, I mean, you still have to go through a process from 1 to 100. You have to talk to every journalist. You have to
costly one.
You have to go through every report. Yeah, but sometimes you can't spare the expense when you're talking about national democracy. You're talking about our national radio station. We've just put 25 million bucks into them, 60% increase in terms of Radio New Zealand.
You want to make sure that's...
So we want the government, we want the public to feel comfortable, and in the end you're reading the recommendations. It might not seem a lot, but we know that it's not being undermined. We know that it was one journalist. We know that the investment now will cover the gap. So I was pleased with the final result, particularly pleased with the work of the chairman, Jim Mather.
Well, it was interesting actually to bring up Jim Mather because he was one of the people criticised in the report as overreacting. And Paul Thompson. What do you think about that?
Well, they're probably right. I mean, it was an emotional time. You know, we all get a little bit of...
We don't pay a chairman to be emotional. We pay him to lead the ship.
But all of a sudden you're looking in front of you and you're seeing all these reports being edited. I mean, obviously Paul got a little bit carried away when he said something about the Kremlin or something, and I'm not sure what Jim said, but no, Jim's been a steady hand, and I think they're on track now. Got the necessary resources in place. I don't think it'll happen again. They're going to cover the gaps. Yeah,
well, I want to know, after reading that report, you know, what they're basically saying is there needs to be structural changes, that the digital news team needs to go under the newsroom. I mean, most newsrooms, if not every other newsroom, did that years ago. So this is news management that was found lacking here. So why wasn't this already done? Why didn't the CEO do it? Why didn't the head of news do it?
You know,
why do we need three people to pay them 230 grand to do it?
Well, this is an organisation that they had their funds frozen for 9 years. 9 years under the national government. So we've put a 60% investment...
Come on, back to the... 60%... These are structural changes should have taken place ages ago.
Yeah, no, but sometimes you can't change the structure if you don't have the funding there, the resources there, the support there. And you know, you can't just pay for someone when you don't have any money.
I mean, I looked at their report and I thought, what are the news managers been doing, Willie?
You just wanted some of the money. I mean, you know...
I mean, come to me next time. Okay, I feel like I could do that. OK, final question on RNZ. What the hell happened with Jason Ake?
Yeah, well, you know... He's a good man, Jace. You know, he actually oversaw my report, and in terms of Māori broadcasting, you know, he's a guy who was a political advisor before. You know, he worked for Parikura Horamea. He's been a bureaucrat, so he knows the system. Like, it was not a surprise, you know, when he got told, hey, mate, pull it in, you know.
So why was he hired if that's, you know, because that is essentially, he said, this is who I am.
You know, I don't know, some people just woke up one day and it was all too much. I mean, you might wake up tomorrow and say, I don't want to do the show anymore. I mean,
I might.
I don't know.
But it might last longer than, what, a week?
I suspect the Kiritapu stuff got to him a bit. I noticed that. You know, I had to talk to him. I gave him a call afterwards.
Didn't you hire him?
Well, you know, the cabinet hired him.
But you hired him?
I talked to him afterwards. I said, hey, mate, what are you doing? You know, and he goes... And, you know, he wasn't asked to resign or anything. He's a good man. He's got some principles, but he had an epiphany. He had an epiphany one day. I mean, it can happen, and you got to respect that.
But
you know?
We do. But surely he could have had the epiphany before he was hired.
Yeah, I know. Well,
he was an inappropriate hire.
But he ticked all the boxes to be hired. You know, he had the background, he had the experience, strong Māori advocate, worked for Radio New Zealand, been a political advisor. I mean, who knows? As I said, people wake up one day and they
just
do
not
something
the temperament,
different.
perhaps.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. I think. When looking at talking with him, no, seriously, I think the Kiritapu stuff really affected him a bit, and he wanted to give a view, and I got to respect that.
Okay, well, now we're looking for a new one. Did he get paid?
Did he get paid for
his couple of weeks on the board?
I didn't check that, but I could go and check it. If you like, you bring me back next week and talk about it again.
Hopefully it wasn't 230 grand. No. Okay, let's talk a little bit about politics. A lot going on. Poll this week.
Good result, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, it could have been worse.
I mean, you would have thought, right? I mean, if you're in the National Party, you would have thought that you'd be 10% ahead, right? Here we are, Labor, right in the race. We probably had the worst 2 months that you've ever seen from a government.
Yeah,
right?
all I've seen is a dumpster fire burning in the cabinet room and Chris Hipkins kind of waving at the smoke every time he comes out.
What does it tell you? It tells you that New Zealanders don't really want Luxon and David Seymour. Too dangerous, too dangerous.
You couldn't help it, could you? You know he's in the green room.
Oh, he's in the green room, was he? Yeah. But the reality is we're right in the race. We've had a nightmare last 2 months. Yeah. And what, we're 3%? You know, if you listen to your lot on at night, it's all over for really? We should be 10-15% behind. We're right in the race. I was quite happy after the poll.
Well, I bet. But the cabinet has really done a number on Prime Minister Chris Hipkins, hasn't he? 4 ministers, Willie.
Yeah, well,
4 ministers gone.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's a lot for him.
He's a brilliant Prime Minister, isn't he? I mean,
he needs a brilliant cabinet.
Amongst the nightmare, he goes up.
The nightmare.
And you know, well, it's been let's be clear. It's been a nightmare last few weeks in terms of what's happened to us. But look, we're still getting on with things. We're still building more houses than the national parliament, national government ever did. You know, Megan Woods is on fire. You know, Grant Robinson, brilliant in the House, while Nicola Willis trips over her words.
Well, she had a great week. I think you could recognise that. Come on. She had a blinder in the House.
It was crass what she said the other day.
Well, it was unfortunate. But taking GST off fruit and vegetables, is that going to fix it for you?
Well, we haven't announced anything in that area.
Well, you might as well.
No, we haven't announced anything in that area.
You've done everything but.
Yeah, so it's not really appropriate for me to talk about.
Be good for whānau though, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, we'll see. I mean, of course, that type of view has been put to me for years. You know, Māori Party talk about it, Māori talk about it. So, you know, I won't say that it's not something that we haven't talked about.
Well, you're definitely talking about it.
Certainly not something I'm going to announce on your show.
I think Nicola Willis has already done it for you anyway. Well, there's more coming for families too, isn't there? There's a hero policy up your sleeve for families. Like a hero kind of policy up your sleeve for families?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is not a time to be talking about policy, but we'll be talking about tax and what we want to do over the next few weeks. This next 3 weeks coming up is incredibly important. But I want to say our caucus has never been stronger. We're not split and broken like the National Party were with Todd Muller and Judith Collins, and we didn't know who the boss was going to be, and Chris Bishop got thrown out, and now he's apparently their main man. You know,
but you are missing a few key members.
We're united. Well, we've lost 3 or 4, but things couldn't be better. Look at where Chippy is, flying in the polls.
I got another one for you. Paid parental leave bill this week. Why didn't you guys support that? Come on.
I'm a person who pushed that through when I was in the Alliance back in 2000.
Got it. But why shouldn't parents be able to decide what's best for them? Why shouldn't whānau be able to say, decide, hey, we need mum and dad at home at the same time?
Oh, there's reasons on why. Well, you heard some of the reasons in terms
I'm asking you about your personal view.
Well, my personal view is that we're already doing enough for families and for mothers, and no one has done more for mothers than the Labour government. We've supported whānau. We will continue to support whānau. It'll be a real investment over the next few months.
It felt like a misstep to me, though, Willie. We'll see. Willie Jackson, thanks so much for joining us. Look forward to seeing that legislation.
Kia ora.